Okay, they're ready to come on. Yeah, the first thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of February 23rd, 2021. Can I have a motion, please? Paul. Paul, welcome back. Glad to see you. What I can see of you. Steve is the second. Okay, any comments, questions? What? Oh, okay. Any comments, questions on the minutes, additions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All ayes. Motion carried unanimously. Okay, information items. We have financial report. Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, my intent this month was to have both an unaudited period 13 from 2020 report and a period 1, but I have people on vacation in both offices, so I'm a little pressed for time, so I did the period 13 for 2020. Just an overview. I want to stress these are unaudited. I know already of a couple entries that we're going to have to post. There's going to be about $200,000 additional FEMA reimbursement revenue for the general fund. Also for risk, there's probably going to be a $280,000 journal entry due to the external auditor's opinion that the state of Illinois so far has been covering the liability for the unemployment, but on the off chance that they decide to change their mind, we're going to book that as liability just to be on the safe side. Overall, right now in the general fund, the revenues are about $540,000 over the budget. I will state that about $1.3 billion of that is cures and FEMA reimbursement. So without that, it would have been slightly under. They did help cover some of the shortfalls. We had supplemental sales tax, public safety sales tax. Our charges for services and fines were both down a little bit when the courthouse was closed. On the other side, our sales tax was up 8%. Our local use was up 27% over budget. On the expense side, we came in about 96% of the revised budget. The commodities expense were slightly over budget, but that's due to this, I think there's about $150,000 worth of COVID expenses in there. But they're on the fund balance sheets, the only areas of concern, there's one grant fund that's a little bit below fund balance, but that's a grant fund with courts. I know that one of the special revenue funds in the circuit clerk's office was a little bit negative, but I think that'll be addressed this year. Headington Oaks is negative, as we know, and then risk is already negative, about $600,000, and will be more so with this journal entry. So that'll probably require some another transfer from the general fund in the future. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them for you.
Any questions from anyone in the audience or from our board? Mr.
Thank
Rand?
you. When you say external auditor said we should accrue for the unemployment liability not rebated yet by the state, which external auditor are you talking about?
The ones that do our audit, Sickich, they've done this with other counties. It's their opinion that the state could change their mind at any time.
How old is the due to?
Pardon?
How old is the due to Peoria County?
Oh, this is just from the stuff in 2020. I believe the state is covering right now is covering all the unemployment expenses that we normally would see because they're getting the federal money to cover it.
So before we ask the controller's office, before we ask our lobbyist in Springfield, before we ask our local legislators, we're going to just go ahead and take a charge because Sickich tells us to?
That is their opinion.
Their opinion is the state of Illinois won't pay the due to.
Their opinion is, if I remember what Brian, the partner, said, that the state can change their mind at any time and might renege on their commitment.
Is that how we account for all of our funds when somebody sticks their finger up the air and makes that postulate?
No, this is,
I don't think it is. It bothers me that we're gonna let Sickich, and I don't care if it was PricewaterhouseCoopers, say that the state of Illinois is gonna go bad on a due to that's from last year. Bothers me. What's the other adjustment they're recommending? And then I'm gonna ask you what their definition of materiality is.
no, this is just, there's probably another $200,000 of FEMA billing for last year that I need to do.
And what is their definition of materiality on a $130 million budget?
You could argue that, yes.
Oh, I am arguing it because I'm an educated person, and I would expect you to as well, sir.
Okay.
I do not like the position that we're being asked to take. I could be completely wrong and don't care. But in a budget, a business plan our size, to say that the state's going to waffle on $280,000, which I'm not even sure is material, okay? Did they disclose to you what the materiality was?
Not yet, no.
Well, they usually don't until you ask them in a room with a bunch of bright lights on. They don't like to tell you that, but I'm wondering why you haven't asked them.
I could have, yes.
I don't accept the recommendation.
I don't think we're doing it today, though, but we're not doing it today. It's not on the agenda today.
This is not what I think public accounting firms are supposed to do.
So noted. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Brunner? No? All right. Then we'll go on to the Headington Oaks report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your packet are the financials for Headington Oaks through December 31st, now period 13 unaudited. The big change that from period 12 to period 13 is you'll see a greater than $1 million reduction in our personnel expenses. This is for closing out an OPEB liability, that's other post-employment benefits. This was something that GASB made a ruling on a couple years ago. This was just added in fiscal year 2018. At that time, when we made the original entry, it was over $1.2 million, and now with Headington Oaks having almost no employees left, we're able to reduce our personnel expenses by over $1 million, making that positive impact to fund balance. Moving to the AR report, this AR report does reflect the posting of the write-offs that were approved by the board in December 2020, and some highlights of our recent work on the accounts receivable. We were able to bill over $62,000, moving that from Medicaid pending to Medicaid on a couple of accounts. My thanks to Member Daly for her assistance with that. We also had an unusual circumstance where we had a resident who received an approval for Medicaid back to 2016 that was not requested by us. And staff caught this. We got a voucher that there were payments going back to 2016 for this resident. The negative impact of that would have been that this resident was with us for 5.5 years as a private pay resident. And if we would transition their account from the correct private pay that it was to these Medicaid payments, we would have ended up with over $108,000 as a credit on their account. And when the Medicaid audit was done with the state comes in and claims any credits are due to them. So that could have cost us over $108,000. But again, with the help of Member Daly, we were able to get that situation reversed. The state acknowledged that that admission should not have been done, and those payments were reversed. So that benefited us there. And currently, we're working on over $636,000 of cases through the various methods we're currently using, and that does not include the upcoming Medicare project with RSM. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer those for you.
Any comments, questions? I might make a statement here that Paul's going to work on some graphs for us so we can see exactly where we started when the nursing home closed and where we're at each month, so it's not just numbers and numbers, so we at least see where we may have a tick up in some and down in others, but the goal is to get us reduced as much as possible. And we don't want to do it all by write-offs. Rob?
Thank you. Do you have a kind of a rough estimate as to how long it might take to collect that balance?
It's really hard to say. I mean, because even with, like, we're using the assistance of the state's attorney's office in some cases, but we can't force people to respond until we get to possible litigation. So it's, you know, even pressing on some people, it's hard to say when we can actually get that money.
Years, months?
We're hoping to have it, I mean, the plan that we highlighted last month, we're hoping to have most of it closed out, or at least have a good idea of where we're going by the end of this year. But if we have some people making payment arrangements, that's something that we'll have to get guidance on to close out in a timely fashion.
Thank you.
Okay, do you want to review the Headington Oaks financial plan? You want to, on the update of it?
I believe
There's just a
Randy was going to do that.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just filling in for Shauna here. I know this was initially, I believe, last month. She asked me just to fill in. There's been some little bit of updates. In the quarter one, we're working on the phase one Medicare bad debt evaluation with RSM. That includes data analysis of all the accounts we have. She highlighted that we have the acceptance from Medicaid of another $60,000. We're coordinating with the state's attorney's office with some of the private and I believe it's hospice providers. And then we have a goal, attempted goal of 10 to 15% at the end of the first quarter. Second quarter, just to give you a little meat to this RSM phase one, phase two. Phase one is a data analysis and evaluation. Phase two is the project execution and documentation, and they look at every account to see what they can write off and how much. I believe we get 60% of any Medicare account that's written off. And then we have, you know, a 30 to 40% for quarter two. Quarter three, the goal is to get the Medicare cost report by July 31st. Any quarter two billing adjustments, then a goal, and then hopefully by in the quarter four we get this pretty much wrapped up.
Any comments or questions on that? That's where we also wanted to have the graph that I was talking about, so you can find out where we started and where we've been and where we're going. Any other comments on the Headington Oaks financial plan? Linda?
I would just say that it would be really helpful to me if I had some sort of an Excel spreadsheet that had the residents' ID number, so not their name, so there's no HIPAA violation, and then the status of that, as well as the TAN number, which is the transaction audit number. And if I could get a listing like that, it would help me so much to figure out where we are. But certainly the Department of Human Services was very grateful that Paul and his team found out that 2 of their caseworkers in separate incidents qualified this woman for Medicaid 5 years ago when she was never qualified. So that was really important in terms of their information.
We will work on getting that spreadsheet to board member daily.
Okay, all right, good. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we will move on to the legislative update.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do that real quick and step over to the laptop. So I think as we communicated to the board and to our elected and appointed officials last week. As part of the annual federal appropriations process, community project funding opportunities will be included in a select number of federal programs. So it's not in every federal program, but a select number. And what you see on the screen is a list of projects that the departments have submitted to administration for that they have that fit into one of the federal programs that would be eligible for these funding opportunities. Funding opportunities will come through members of the House of Representatives. Each representative will have a maximum of 10 projects that they could support from across their congressional district, and they have until mid-April to submit those to the applicable subcommittee of the House Appropriations Committee. And so we'll get this list out to the committee members, but what we'll be looking for is a little bit of feedback here in the next couple of days as to which projects you would like us to pursue the most. I would recommend that we narrow this list down to probably 3 to 5 of ones that we feel are most likely for either Congresswoman Bustos or Congressman LaHood to support and put into the process on our behalf. That doesn't mean it will get funded, but it's the first hurdle in the process. And when I distribute this list to you, I will include a recommendation for myself as to which ones I think are most likely to be successful. But obviously, we'll take your feedback, and if you would like to see something else from what I recommended, we'll obviously pull those forward. And then there's a process that we'll have to go through to submit those to both representatives. The project does have to have robust community support. That's actually the exact language that's in the guidance that the Appropriations Committee put out to all the members of the House of Representatives. So as we move through through our process in determining which projects we're going to submit, keep that in the back of your mind in your decision-making process. So if there's something on here that does not have a significant community support, or then it may not be of high enough value for either one of the representatives to include in their package. Examples of robust community support, if it's a transportation project, as long as it's in the regional long-range transportation plan, that checks that box. If it's a project that would have multiple not-for-profit and or local government partners, that would also check the box. One final point about this process: no for-profit entity is eligible to apply nor receive funds through this process. So this process is only for units of government, state, local, and tribal, and for not-for-profits. With that, I can answer any questions.
Any questions, comments? Steve, Mr. Ricker.
This is Jennifer. I have a question.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
When did you say you'd have those sent out to the members, Scott?
We'll get those emailed out to you before the end of business today or before lunch tomorrow.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ricker.
I guess you gave the one primary guidance that was given. I guess any other guidance, either written or assumed, as far as the projects that would qualify to be selected?
Each program may have its own separate guidance. An example might be a certain amount of local match might be required, and that'll be program dependent. So, a program within the Department of Transportation might have a match requirement that's different from the Department of Health and Human Services. So that varies widely depending on which program the project would fit into. Other than that, in any of the other specific or unique program requirements that are already in place for each one of those programs. And there are roughly, anywhere from 2 to 6 or 7 programs per subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee, and I believe there's 9 or 10 subcommittees on appropes. So there's there's less than 100 federal programs that funding is possible for.
And I guess you kind of were taking me to the next question I had was on the match. So if there is a local match that has to be provided, I think that's a data point that we would need to know, right? So if we put one of these projects out there, we want to pursue this one, and it takes a 20% match, then we need to make sure that we have budget and funds to match with that, correct?
That is correct. And there's some programs or some projects that are up on the screen that, quite honestly, are probably, we would be asking for partial funding because they're outside the realistic realm of what would likely be funded anyway. The magic window, if this funding process is going to be anything close to what it was over a decade ago, which is the last time we saw this process in place in the Congress, it was between 200,000 and maybe 2.5 million. There weren't hardly any projects ever got funded in excess of 2.5 million. It had to be something incredibly special, and to have significant support from both your congressperson and your 2 senators and probably maybe your entire state delegation. So something that maybe would not come from a local government, but a state government.
Scott, when those go out to the board members, are you going to have your recommendations along with it at that time?
That would be my intent, yes.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful. Thank you. Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, we have one resolution. Could I have a motion? It's for the FY 2021 encumbrance rollover appropriations. Excuse
I'll
me.
make a motion. This is Rachel.
Okay, just a second, Rachel. We have a question on the floor.
I had a question about the Sheridan Road reconstruction. Is it possible to divide that up into sections so it's not over $9 million?
I'll certainly ask the Highway Department if that's possible. If memory serves correctly, the project boundaries are roughly Notre Dame High School up to Northmore Road, I think. Although that they may have also included the segment from Northmore up to Giles/Knoxville. So if we could probably do this, the southern segment is the one that's most needed, but that northern segment may be the least expensive. So we can look at it from that perspective, and I'll try and have it broken out if possible when I send the email out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Rachel, you made the motion.
Yes.
Okay, is there a second? Paul? All right, we'll have our discussion then.
Pretty,
Mr. Fennell, what district is that in?
We're talking about down in Sheridan?
Yes.
I don't know.
It's split. The southern half is my district, the northern half is Member Daley's.
All right.
I can summarize the resolution, Mr. Chairman. So this is a resolution that the committee sees about this time every year. These are 2020 purchase orders that were for approved expenditures for various expenses where the project was not completed before the end of 2020. The total value of all of those is $688,762. Of that total, $133,898 is in the general fund. And so your action will roll the spending authority for those existing purchase orders to the current fiscal year so that those projects can be completed and those purchase orders can be closed out upon project completion.
Okay, are there any questions about that? We've done this every year, roll over the purchase orders that weren't completed. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passed unanimously. Miscellaneous items. Any miscellaneous items? All right, then we be adjourned. Thank you.
Now and
Betty Duncan.
left.